Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I thank the organizers and the society for inviting me to give a talk on prevention of secondary brain injury. This conference was supposed to be held last year in one of the oldest hospital in modern city of Bangalore. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we could not host this conference. I am happy that finally the conference is happening this year, though virtually. The primary brain injury is basically physical injury to the brain, either due to compression, deformation, displacement, stretching, shearing, tearing, or crushing of tissues or blood vessels of the brain, and little can be done about prevention or treatment of these injuries. However, after primary brain injury, brain is vulnerable to perturbations in cerebral blood flow, oxygen supply, as well as energy demand, and all these three are preventable and treatable as well. To prevent and treat secondary brain injury, a number of monitoring is used. This is an example from an intensive care of a developed country where you can see a large number of monitors are being used to treat a patient with severe TBI. However, in reality, two physiological monitoring, that is oxygen saturation and blood pressure, are more than enough and can have a substantial impact in outcome of traumatic brain injury. So in this talk, I will be talking about four physiological derangements which can be prevented or managed. There is a direct relationship between the rise in temperature and brain damage. However, for blood glucose, it's a U-shaped curve, that is too little or too high glucose can damage brain. Brain damage decreases as the oxygenation of brain improves, as well as the systemic blood pressure improves. These physiological parameters are also incorporated in almost all prognostic models. This is an example of impact TBI prognosis model where you can see hypoxia, hypotension, and glucose are included as variables. We also developed a prognostic model and published recently. And besides the indicator of primary brain injury like GCS and obliteration of the third ventricle, that CT scan finding, we also found that hypoxia and hypotension were significant predictor of mortality in ICU. Temperature management is important as cerebral metabolism increases for each degree rise in the temperature, and glucose and oxygen consumption also increases. Fever early after TBI is associated with poor GCS at presentation, presence of diffuse axonal injury, particularly at Pontognus and cephalic junction or in hypothalamic region, with severe edema, with hypotension, hyperglycemia, and initial leukocytosis. Fever in first week of brain injury is associated with raised ICP, neurological impairment, and decline in the intermediate course of the disease and long-term poor outcome. Fever not only increases mortality, but it also increases the risk of unfavorable outcome. This is a bar diagram from more than 14,000 patients with severe brain injury, whether due to trauma or stroke. In all cases, fever was associated with increased mortality and unfavorable outcome. To prevent fever, temperature should be monitored frequently, and the cause of fever should be sought and treated promptly. Antipyretics like paracetamol are definitely first line of treatment. Though a number of cooling devices are described to reduce fever, they are associated with shivering, which also needs to be monitored and treated, as shivering itself can increase the metabolic demand. So there is no need of hypothermia and we need not to freeze the brain, but the brain should be protected from getting heated up due to fever. Diclofenac is one of the options when fever cannot be controlled with conventional measure. A low-dose diclofenac infusion reduces fever when fever cannot be controlled. However, it can be associated with some side effects like hypotension, oliguria, and even reduction in cerebral perfusion and brain oxygenation. But low dose infusion, that is not more than 1 mp of diclofenac over 24 hours, does not cause any of the side effects. And this is one of the landmark study which showed that the patients who received continuous diclofenac infusion had more number of afebrile days. Another physiological parameter which is important in management of brain injury is glucose. Hyperglycemia can occur due to stress, due to injury, due to inflammation, in pre-existing diabetes mellitus, or when there is pituitary hypothalamic injury. And not to forget the iatrogenic factor, it is still not uncommon to receive a patient with severe TBI on glucose infusion. All this can cause hyperglycemia, which in turn can cause acidosis, electrolyte imbalance, inflammation, blood-brain barrier disruption, and increased permeability. All will cause secondary brain injury and lead to poor outcome. So hyperglycemia should be avoided, and there is a class 1 evidence that glucose should be maintained between 140 to 180 in intensive care unit. However, tight glycemic control, which was once upon a time quite popular, is not indicated, and at any cost, hypoglycemia should be avoided. So this comes to that our impact prognostic model, where you can see for all the parameters constant, a person with normal glucose has lower chance of mortality and unfavorable outcome as the person with hyperglycemia. Your take-home message is insulin infusion may be used to avoid significant hyperglycemia, but tight glycemic control is not indicated, and hypoglycemia should be avoided at all times. Blood pressure is one of the vital parameters which needs to be monitored in TBI. Hypotension can occur after TBI in presence of extracranial injury, and scalp bleeding. In our study, we found that the relative risk of mortality and unfavorable outcome was more in patients received with scalp bleeding, which was not secured at a lower level hospital. In spite of hypovolemia, endogenous catecholamines maintain BP even if hypovolemia exists. But if you give mannitol, the blood pressure can drop, and sudden reduction of ICP by surgical decompression can also crash the blood pressure. Hence, normovolume and normotension must be maintained. In our own model, we found that patients with hypotension had 22 times chance of death as compared to persons with hypotension. The recent Brain Trauma Foundation guidelines have revised the target of systolic blood pressure. Earlier, 90 was the magic figure, but now it is recommended that BP should be maintained more than 100 millimeter of mercury for 50 to 69 years old, and more than 110 for older people and younger patients. Irrespective of blood pressure, the most important parameter is cerebral perfusion pressure if you are measuring intracranial pressure. So CPP needs to be maintained between 60 to 70 millimeter of mercury, and at any cost, the CPP should not be increased to more than 70 millimeter of mercury, as the therapies to improve CPP further are more deleterious to heart and lungs. So this is the impact model for a given patient with the rest of the parameters constant. The hypotension is associated with significantly increased mortality as well as unfavorable outcome. We have heard a lot about oxygen crisis during COVID times. Oxygen is very important for brain, and early post-injury episodes of hypoxemia increases mortality and morbidity substantially. On field, if patient is found apneic or cyanosis, this confirms hypoxia, whereas a saturation less than 90% indicates hypoxia. And endotracheal intubation of unconscious and unresponsive patients improves outcome. So oxygen saturation has to be monitored continuously, and supplemental oxygen should be given in patients with hypoxia. If available, endotracheal intubation should be done in presence of hypoxia, apnea, or upper airway compromise, and in comatose patient. Though it is controversial to do endotracheal intubation in pre-hospital setting, however, some form of airway protection is required to prevent hypoxia. In one of our study, we found that respiratory distress in patients in pre-hospital period was associated with unfavorable outcome. In our own prognostic model, we found that hypoxia was associated with 8 times chance of death. And this is from the impact model for a given patient. In presence of normal oxygen, mortality and unfavorable outcomes significantly less as compared to hypoxia. Both together, that is hypoxia and hypotension, are deadly combination and significantly increase mortality. In presence of both factors, the mortality is increased by 14 times. This is what we have been taught classically. However, it has been reproduced recently in EPIC study, which involved implementation of pre-hospital TBI guidelines with emphasis on avoidance of hypoxia, hyperventilation, and hypotension. And they replicated these findings and found that after adherence to pre-hospital guideline, the mortality as well as unfavorable outcomes significantly decreased. This is from our impact model for a given patient, like presence of both increased substantially the mortality as well as unfavorable outcome at 6 months. So take home message, uh, management of patient with a severe traumatic brain injury does not require a very great ICU. Neuro ICU, definitely neuro ICU improves the outcome of the TBI, but even in presence of simple medical or surgical ICU, with simple measures like head of bed elevation to 30 degrees to reduce intracranial pressure, maintenance of normal blood pressure, maintenance of normal oxygenation, and maintenance of normal temperature and maintenance of normal glucose will significantly reduce mortality as well as morbidity. I wish to come to Madurai and visit this temple maybe next time. Thank you very much.